What's going on, guys? Breakhaven here with part 3 of our camera tutorial. So far we've learned about ISO, we've learned about shutter speed, and last but not least, let's dive into aperture, also known as f-stop. Make sure your camera is in manual. Look at the top of your camera. You should see this little dial and make sure it's on the M. We're shooting in manual. From here on out, we will always and for the rest of our lives shoot in manual. Why is that? Because when you shoot on any other mode, it's pretty much on automatic and the camera doesn't know what scene it's lighting. It doesn't know what you've done in this room, what light you have here, what light you have here, and what light you have here. It has no idea for what look you're trying to go for. It just sees an image and it just tries its best to balance it out. So that's why we don't shoot on anything other than manual. Now, let's talk about aperture, also known as f-stop. From here on out, I'm going to refer to it as f-stop because on your camera, you're going to see F and then a number. So I think that's pretty, more accurate to say f-stop than aperture as far as, getting you guys to remember it. So let's talk about f-stop. Now, the lower the f-stop number, f2.8, f1.8, f1.4, f1.2, the smaller or the lower the number is, the bigger the lens opens up, or the wider the lens opens up, which means it lets more light in, which means it's going to be better in low light. So when you talk about an environment where it's super low light, yeah, you want a lens that's able to bring that f-stop down so we can let all of the available light in. So the lower the f-stop number, the bigger the hole is in the lens and the more light it lets in. And when it lets all of this light in, it also has a shallow depth of field. So whenever you see, pictures or video where there's a person in focus and then the background is super blurred out, that's because they're shooting at a low f-stop. So what's considered a lens that's good in low light is f2.8 and below. Anything f2.8 and below is considered a low light lens. Anything above 2.8 is no longer considered a low light lens. Now, obviously, if this is a low f-stop number and it's letting light in, then the higher that number is, the more this hole shrinks up. So let's say that this is f2.8. This would be from f2.8 to f4 is a full stop. From f4 to f5.6 is a full stop. From f5.6 to f8 is a full stop. From f8 to f11 is a full stop. Then from 11 to 16, and from 16 to 22. Those are the full stops of light as it pertains to f-stop. Now, the higher the f-stop number, because it's letting less light in, the picture's automatically going to get darker, which means what? Which means you're going to have to adjust the other two settings, either the shutter speed, the ISO, or a combination of both to balance out the light. So we talked about how when it pertains to the f-stop, the lower the number, the more light it lets in, the shallow the depth of field is. So obviously when we're bringing it up, then it's less light that's being let in, and that's more of the background that's in focus. So if I'm shooting a picture at f8 versus a picture at f2.8, which is what, guys? That's from f2.8 to f4, f4 to f5.6, and f5.6 to f8. So if I go from f2.8 to f8, that's a 3-stop light difference. From f2.8 to f8, that's 3 full stops, which means it's going to be 3 stops darker, which means I would need to either adjust the ISO, the shutter speed, more than likely a combination of both. I could either bridge the gap by going 2 stops down in the shutter speed and a stop up in the ISO, because that still totals 3 stops. Or I can do 2 stops up in the ISO and 1 stop down in the shutter. That's still 3 stops of light, guys. So just to make sure you guys have to remember, it's very important that you guys remember the stops of light in each individual parameter. So F8, F11, F16 is darkening up that image. If you're inside somewhere, you're not shooting that high. You're trying to shoot at maybe F4 and below. F4 isn't considered low light, but you can get away with F4 inside of a room, even F5.6. And obviously when we have these different lighting setups, then yeah, we can really, crank the f-stop up because we have available light to cut out. So just keep that in mind. Now, it would be a better tutorial for me to show you a demonstration with a picture than with video, but I can do a little tutorial of the difference in f-stop with video. So I'm shooting currently with an f2.8 lens, and it's a 20mm lens, which means it's shooting super wide. Literally, I am touching the lens right now. Like, I can turn it. That's how close I am, but I look far off because I'm shooting with the 20mm. It's wide. It makes this room look significantly bigger than what it is. I love wide angle lenses. It has its place. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to have this camera focus on this phone. Right now, this should be focused, which means if you can even see this hand, it should be blurred. So in order for me to have this phone in focus and my hand in focus, then I'm gonna have to crank that f-stop up. So let me make an adjustment. I'm going to, because my f-stop is at 2.8, again, I have my hand super close to the lens, therefore it was focusing on my hand, and the hand that you saw waving, you couldn't see. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go up in the f-stop department, and I'm just gonna pick a random number. I'm gonna say f11. So let's count from f4, from f2.8 to f4 is a full stop. From 4 to 5.6 is a full stop. From 5.6 to f8 is a full stop. From f8 to f11 is a full stop of light. So that's how many stops, guys. From 2.8 to f4, that's 1. 4 to 5.6, that's 2. 5.6 to 8, that's 3. And from 8 to 11, that's 4. That's 4 stops of light. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go 4 stops in the ISO. And I can do any combination of this, but I'm gonna go 4 stops of ISO. So let's look at the ISO. From 2 to 4 is a stop. 4 to 8 is 2 stops. 8 to 1600 is 3 stops. And from 1600 to 3200 is 4 stops. Now, I'm going to get back in front of the camera and I'm going to put my phone up against the lens, and I'm going to see if that hand is better in focus than it was before. If you couldn't see my hand initially and you're seeing both hands now, then this hand should be more in focus than it was before. So between the phone and this back hand, they should both be more in focus than they were before. So what I've noticed by just looking at the footage is that when you have that f-stop high, which means I'm going to be in focus and the background is going to be more in focus, the camera actually has trouble on what it should be focusing on, because according to the settings in my camera, everything's supposed to be in focus to a degree. So it looks like the footage is pulsating, because it's like, well, dang, do I focus on his hand or do I focus on the window in the back with the lights? Now, if I was shooting at a shallower depth of field, if I was shooting at f2.8 and my hand was here, it knows I need to focus on the closest thing to the camera. I know not to focus on what's in the back because we're shooting at a shallower depth of field. So that's something to keep in mind when it comes to shooting at a high f-stop. You may have trouble focusing when it comes to video. Photography, you'll be fine, but when it comes to video, if you're shooting at a high f-stop and you have it to where it automatically focuses within your camera, you may have some trouble. You may have to manual focus, which nobody wants to manual focus, I know. But that may be something that you have to do when it comes to video. Make sense? Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and you guys will see more tutorials like this. All right.
Man makes plans, but I'm way more powerful than y'all. I built the world in 7 days, that's power, but I can knock it all down in 24 hours. I sit back, I'm watching it all. I know how it all unfolds. I built the world in 7 days, that's power, but I can knock it all down in 24 hours.
Let me tell you how I did
some things. I created earth from top to bottom, even